I could feel my palms sweat as I sat there, the tension hanging thick in the air. It wasn't just another family meeting, it was a moment I could already feel would change everything. Sarah, my older sister, sat across from me, her voice a little too sweet, a little too polished. It was the kind of voice she used when she wanted something big. "Jake, please. I just need you to co-sign the loan. It's the only way I can make this work," she said, giving me her signature pleading look. Her eyes were wide and innocent, but I knew better. I wasn't some gullible fool she could pull the wool over. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed, trying to look as indifferent as I could. "Why exactly do you need me?" I asked, my voice calm but heavy with suspicion. She huffed, rolling her eyes in that way that always got under my skin. "Because my credit is terrible, Jake. I'm trying to fix things, but I need a good car to get the job. The job that's going to get me back on track." I raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. "So, you're asking me to help you take on more debt? Doesn't sound like a good plan to me." She sat forward, her hands clasped together, and I knew this was her final attempt to make me feel guilty. "It's not about the debt, Jake. It's about me building a future. I'm going to be driving for a rideshare service full-time, and I know it'll be worth it. I did the research." "Did you?" I muttered under my breath. "I'm pretty sure that research would have told you a car loan isn't a great idea when you're already swimming in credit card debt." My mom, sitting beside Sarah, let out a sigh and intervened. "Jake, don't be so dramatic. Sarah is doing this for herself. This is an opportunity she can't pass up." My jaw clenched as I looked over at Dad, who was sitting there with his usual disapproving stare. They didn't even seem to care about the logic anymore. They just wanted me to help. "So, let me get this straight," I said, trying to stay calm. "You want me to co-sign for a loan that's going to ruin my credit if she defaults on the payments, and I'm just supposed to sit back and hope everything works out?" Dad slammed his coffee mug on the table, cutting me off. "Watch your tone, Jake. You've got a stable job, a steady income. This won't be a problem for you." "Yeah, but if she stops paying, the problem will be mine," I shot back. "It's my credit, my name on the line. I'm the one who will suffer." I could see Sarah's face twist with frustration. "You're acting like I'm some kind of idiot, Jake," she snapped. "You think I don't know what I'm doing?" I met her eyes, my patience wearing thin. "No, Sarah. I think you're being reckless. And I'm not going to be the one who has to clean up your mess when this all falls apart." The words stung, but I knew I had to say them. For too long, I had been the one to fix things when she screwed up, but I couldn't do it anymore. I wasn't going to be the safety net that allowed her to keep making the same mistakes. Mom shook her head in disappointment. "Jake, why are you always so negative? She's your sister. She needs your help." I laughed bitterly, not even trying to hide the anger in my voice. "Family helps each other, not drags each other down." "Jake, this is a chance for Sarah to get her life together," Mom said. "Can't you just help her out? She's doing the work, trying to build something." I gritted my teeth, not wanting to lose my cool in front of them. "And what about the payments, huh? What if she doesn't stick to this plan of hers? What do I do then?" Sarah leaned in, her voice softer now, like she was trying to manipulate me with kindness. "Please, Jake. Just this once. Help me out. I promise I'll make it work." My gut screamed at me not to do it. Everything in me told me this was a bad idea, that it was a trap, but I couldn't say no to my mom, not when she was looking at me like that. So, I did what I always did, I caved. I signed the papers. At first, Sarah was so full of excitement, sending me texts about how much money she was making, how proud she was of herself. "Made $250 in one night," she texted. "Told you this was a good idea." I was skeptical, but for a while, she actually kept it up. She worked long hours, driving all over town, even turning down plans to stay on the road. For a moment, I actually believed she was serious about turning her life around. But then, the excuses started. I need a mental health break. Driving all day is exhausting. Then it was a story about how someone puked in her car, and she had to get it detailed. After that, it was a weekend trip to Miami. I needed a break, Jake. I'm just so stressed out, she texted me, complete with a picture of her lounging on the beach with a cocktail in hand. The excuses piled up, and soon, the first late payment came. Then another. I watched as the notifications started flooding in, and I knew things were about to get messy. When I checked her Instagram again, I saw a picture of her at a party, holding a drink, captioned, "Work hard, play harder." That was it. I couldn't take it anymore. I called her immediately, but she didn't pick up. I called again, straight to voicemail. Finally, I texted her. "Sarah, where's the car payment?" The dots appeared, then disappeared, and finally, her reply came, "Chill, Jake. I'm handling it." That was when I knew I had to get involved. No more excuses, no more playing along. If she wasn't going to take responsibility, I would. The next step was clear. I had to take control before my credit was completely ruined. The first few days after I texted Sarah about the car payment were agonizing. I couldn't get her to respond to my calls, and when she did, it was always a half-hearted excuse. I was losing patience, and it was becoming clear that I was going to have to face the consequences of her irresponsibility alone. It wasn't just the late payments anymore. I was watching my credit score slowly plummet as the bank's late fee notices kept piling up. I had no choice but to confront her. There was no more room for negotiation, no more patience left. I decided to drive over to her apartment, even though I knew I'd probably regret it. But it was the only way I could get through to her. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was worried. My financial future was now tied to her failure to handle this loan, and I had no idea how deep she had gotten into this mess. I pulled up to her apartment complex, staring at the rundown building. It was the same place she'd been living since she got out of the dorms, a place that always seemed to suck the energy out of her. I had offered to help her move into something nicer once, but she refused, insisting that she was fine living there, even though I knew she hated it. It was just another one of those excuses she kept making to avoid dealing with the reality of her situation. I rang her doorbell and waited, trying to calm the nervous pit in my stomach. After a few moments, she opened the door, looking disheveled. Her hair was messy, and she was still wearing pajamas, even though it was past noon. "Jake, what are you doing here?" she asked, her tone more defensive than I expected. "I need to talk to you." "About the car loan," I said, not wasting time on pleasantries. "I can't keep doing this, Sarah. The payments are overdue, and I'm not going to keep getting the blame for this when it all falls apart." She stepped aside, letting me into the apartment. "It's not that bad," she said, her voice wavering. "I'll get it figured out. You don't need to worry." I almost laughed. "You've been saying that for weeks. You promised me you were handling it, but I don't see any action. All I see are excuses and empty promises." She closed the door behind me and led me to the small living room. The place was a mess, clothes strewn across the couch, empty takeout containers on the coffee table, a sign of someone who wasn't pulling things together like they claimed. "Look, Jake, I'm trying," she said, sitting down on the couch and rubbing her eyes. "But it's just so hard. You don't understand. I'm doing the best I can." I stood there, my arms folded. "No, you're not. The best you can isn't good enough when it's my future on the line. I've been patient, but this is beyond that. You can't keep playing this game with me. You need to take responsibility, or I'm out. I'm not going to let you drag me down with you." Her eyes narrowed, her lips pressing into a thin line. "Fine, then. You want me to take responsibility, huh?" she snapped. "What about you, Jake? When was the last time you ever helped me without making me feel like I owed you something? You think I don't know how you've been judging me? How you look down on me?" I felt a surge of anger rush through me, but I fought to keep my cool. "This isn't about me, Sarah. This is about you, and the mess you've created with my name on it. This is about you running away from your problems instead of facing them. She stood up, her voice rising. You're such a hypocrite. You act like you're some perfect saint, but you've never been there for me, Jake. Never. Every time I mess up, you judge me, you look at me like I'm some failure. Well, guess what? I'm not you. I'm not perfect, and I never will be, okay? I stared at her, shocked at the way she was twisting things. That's not what this is about, Sarah. You asked me to help you, and I did. But I didn't sign up for this, having my credit destroyed by your irresponsibility. Yeah, well, maybe you should have thought of that before you said yes, she shot back, her eyes filled with venom. You think you're better than me? That you have all your shit together? Maybe you don't see how hard it's been for me, okay? You don't know what it's like. I stood there, feeling the sting of her words, but I couldn't back down. What I know, Sarah, is that you've been given every chance, and you're throwing it away. You're acting like a victim when you're the one who dug this hole. She took a step back, her shoulders sagging. For a moment, she looked defeated, but then something in her eyes flickered. It wasn't guilt, though, no, it was something darker. Fine, she said coldly. If you don't want to help me, then don't. But don't come running to me when everything blows up in your face. I'll be just fine without you. I opened my mouth to respond, but the words stuck in my throat. It was clear to me now that I wasn't just dealing with someone who was overwhelmed or struggling. I was dealing with someone who had no intention of taking responsibility. Someone who had learned how to play the victim and twist the situation to their advantage. I turned to leave, but as I reached the door, Sarah spoke again, her voice quieter this time. You think I'm the one who's messed up, Jake? Well, you're wrong. The real problem here is that you're the one who keeps bailing me out, and I'm sick of it. Her words hit me like a slap across the face. I didn't want to admit it, but she was right. I had been the one constantly trying to fix things, to step in whenever she made a mistake. I had been enabling her, and that was the harshest truth of all. I walked out of her apartment without another word, my mind racing. But as I drove away, I knew I couldn't go back. I had to let her face the consequences of her own actions. This time, I wasn't saving her. The next few days felt like I was living in a fog. The weight of the confrontation with Sarah hung over me like a dark cloud, and I couldn't shake the anger and disappointment that gnawed at me. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down, I knew I had crossed the line. The truth was undeniable. Sarah wasn't just irresponsibly managing her finances, she was manipulating me, too. I tried calling her again after that day, but she wouldn't answer. I left messages, desperate for some sort of resolution, but each one went unanswered. It became clear to me that this wasn't just about the loan anymore. She wasn't going to face the truth, and she certainly wasn't going to make things right. By the end of the week, I got a call from my bank. The loan was officially in default, and the collections department was already getting involved. The realization hit me hard. This wasn't just a few missed payments anymore, this was going to have long-lasting consequences on my credit. Everything I'd worked for, the house, the car, the future I'd been trying to build, was now at risk because of Sarah's carelessness. I couldn't just sit around waiting for her to step up and make things right. This was my life on the line, not hers. I had to take action, even if it meant doing something I'd been avoiding, getting the law involved. I spent the next couple of days meeting with a lawyer to discuss my options. The frustration was overwhelming as I explained the situation. My lawyer, a calm and methodical man named Greg, listened intently. When I was done, he looked at me, his expression serious. Jake, you have every right to be upset. But you need to understand that this is going to be a long and messy process. If you want to sue her for breach of contract or negligence, you'll need clear evidence. And you'll need to prove that you didn't authorize these payments. I nodded, already feeling the weight of what I was about to undertake. It wasn't going to be easy, but there was no turning back. What's my best course of action? I asked, my voice hoarse. Greg looked at me thoughtfully. The first thing you'll want to do is gather all the documentation you can. Bank statements, emails, messages, anything that proves your case. Once we have that, we'll start working on sending a formal demand letter to Sarah. If she doesn't respond, we can take her to court. But this could take months, even years. Months or years? I repeated, incredulous. You're telling me this is going to drag out that long? He gave me a sympathetic look. Unfortunately, yes. Legal battles aren't quick. But you need to be prepared for the long haul. And even if you win, there's no guarantee that you'll get the money back. The words felt like a punch to the stomach. I had hoped for a quick fix, for Sarah to realize her mistake and make things right, but it was becoming clear that wasn't going to happen. I spent the rest of the week gathering everything I could: credit reports, loan documents, screenshots of the messages I had sent her. The more I looked through everything, the more I realized just how deep I had gotten into this. I had trusted Sarah to take responsibility, but instead, she had been passing the buck, lying, and avoiding her responsibilities. It wasn't just the money that had hurt, it was the betrayal. I had given her chances, time after time, and each time, she had squandered it. But this time, I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to protect myself. It was late on a Thursday night when I finally got a call from Sarah. Her voice sounded strained, as if she had been crying. "Jake," she said, barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry. I know I've messed up. But please, I don't know what to do." I was stunned into silence for a moment. It was the first time she had actually admitted that she had messed up. But I couldn't let myself get caught up in her apology again. Not this time. "You don't get it, Sarah," I said, my voice cold. "You've put me in a situation that I can't get out of. You've ruined my credit, and now I'm stuck dealing with the consequences. I'm not your backup plan anymore. You need to fix this on your own." "But I can't, Jake," she cried. "I'm sorry, but I just don't know how. I've told you over and over that you need to handle it, but you kept ignoring it," I replied. "You didn't listen, Sarah. I can't keep carrying you." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "I never asked you to carry me," she said, the bitterness creeping back into her voice. "You just did it because you wanted to feel like the hero. Well, guess what? I don't need you to save me." Her words stung more than I cared to admit. I had wanted to be the good guy, to fix everything, but now it was clear that she never appreciated it. She was never going to take responsibility, and no matter how much I tried to help, it was never enough for her. "I'm done, Sarah," I said, my voice firm. "Don't call me again unless you're serious about fixing this. I'm not going to keep dragging this out." I hung up the phone and sat there, the silence swallowing me up. I knew this wasn't just about the loan anymore. It was about everything: the lies, the broken promises, the feeling that I had been used. I had tried to help her, but now I realized that I couldn't save someone who wasn't willing to save themselves. The days after my conversation with Sarah were the hardest yet. I had cut ties with her for good, or so I thought. But no matter how many times I reminded myself that I couldn't fix her mistakes, I still found myself waking up in the middle of the night, feeling like something was missing. That sense of guilt, of having let her down, gnawed at me every time I closed my eyes. I had hired Greg, the lawyer, to move forward with my case. But even as I pushed forward, my mind kept drifting back to Sarah. How had it all gone so wrong? It didn't feel right to just abandon her, but what choice did I have? She had taken advantage of my trust, my kindness, and now I was left picking up the pieces of my life. I spent the next week focused on gathering evidence, digging through every email, every text message, and every phone call I had made to Sarah in an attempt to find something that would help my case. It wasn't easy. The weight of the situation, the mess I had been dragged into, felt suffocating. But there was no turning back. By the time I had gathered everything, I was ready to send the demand letter. Greg had gone over it with me, making sure every word was precise, that every argument was solid. We knew it was going to be a fight. And I wasn't sure if Sarah would even respond. But I couldn't wait around forever. The longer I waited, the worse my credit score would get, and the more my financial future would be compromised. I handed over the letter to Greg and sat back, my stomach twisted in knots as the finality of it all hit me. I had done everything I could to avoid this, to avoid getting caught up in a legal battle with my own sister, but now I had no other option. It was either this or face the consequences of her irresponsibility for the rest of my life. Days turned into weeks, and the silence from Sarah was deafening. I waited for her to call, to apologize, or to at least acknowledge the damage she had caused. But nothing came. And that's when I started to realize just how far gone she was. She wasn't going to change. She was still the same person who had lied to me, manipulated me, and used me for her own benefit. A month after I had sent the demand letter, I got a response. It was a letter from Sarah's lawyer, a woman who had been hired to represent her interests. The letter was filled with legal jargon, and it made it clear that Sarah was denying any wrongdoing. She claimed that I had been aware of the loan and that I had even authorized some of the transactions. The audacity of her defense stunned me. I knew I hadn't given her permission for any of it, but it didn't matter to her. She was trying to turn the tables and make me look like the bad guy. The letter made my blood boil, but at the same time, I was oddly relieved. It was confirmation that Sarah wasn't going to take responsibility for anything. It was clear that she would fight this every step of the way, and she was prepared to drag me through the mud in the process. I called Greg immediately. "What do I do now?" I asked, my voice sharp. "Jake, it's going to get ugly from here," Greg said, his voice calm but firm. "But this is a good sign. They're defending themselves, which means they know they're in trouble. If they were truly in the right, they wouldn't need a lawyer." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "So, what's the next step?" "We're going to start preparing for court. You'll need to keep gathering evidence, bank statements, emails, anything that proves she lied to you and took out the loan without your knowledge. The more evidence we have, the stronger your case will be." I nodded, feeling a sense of determination that had been absent for weeks. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about holding Sarah accountable for her actions. It was about making sure that she understood that there were consequences to manipulating me, to lying to me, to treating me like I was disposable. The legal battle dragged on. It wasn't easy. Every time I thought we had gathered enough evidence, Sarah's lawyer would come back with some new counterargument, some new way to twist the situation in her favor. But I kept pushing forward, more determined than ever. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I wasn't going to let her destroy my life and walk away unscathed. But as the weeks went by, I started to feel the pressure of the situation. It wasn't just the legal battle. It was the toll it was taking on my mental health, on my sense of peace. I hadn't realized how much I had been carrying until it became clear that this fight wasn't going to end anytime soon. I had spent so much time focused on the legal aspects of it all that I had forgotten about the emotional impact this was having on me. I wasn't just fighting a financial battle. I was fighting a battle for my own dignity, my sense of self-worth. And that battle was far from over. Months had passed since the legal battle began, and every day felt like an eternity. The strain of it all had worn me down. There were moments when I wondered if this fight was worth it. The relentless back and forth with Sarah's lawyer, the constant pressure of proving that I hadn't authorized the loan, at times, I just wanted to walk away and leave it all behind. But I couldn't. I had come too far, and I wasn't going to let Sarah off the hook. Not after everything she had done. The truth was, the entire process had taken a toll on me, more than I had anticipated. I was constantly on edge, and my thoughts never seemed to quiet down. I had to keep revisiting the evidence, preparing for depositions, reviewing the endless paperwork. But through all the chaos, something inside me had shifted. The person I was before this mess, trusting, naive, and willing to overlook people's flaws, was no longer the same person. I had learned so much about myself during this fight, more than I ever could have imagined. Then, the day I had been dreading arrived. The court date was set. The night before, I hardly slept. I stayed up late reviewing the documents one last time, going over the details of the case, reminding myself of every word Sarah had said and every lie she had told. This wasn't just about the loan anymore. It was about showing her that I wasn't going to be her punching bag anymore. It was about standing up for myself in a way I never had before. The courtroom was intimidating, even more than I had expected. The walls were cold and sterile, the air thick with tension. I could feel my palms sweating as I sat there, waiting for the proceedings to begin. Sarah had already arrived with her lawyer, and the moment I laid eyes on her, a familiar feeling of betrayal washed over me. She didn't even look guilty. In fact, she looked almost calm, as if she had nothing to lose. But I knew better. I knew the truth, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The judge called the room to order, and I stood up, along with Greg, ready to present my case. My heart pounded in my chest as I began to speak. The words came out more easily than I expected, the evidence I had gathered supporting every claim I made. I watched as Sarah's lawyer tried to pick apart my statements, but it was clear, everything I said was backed up by facts. There was no escaping it. Then came Sarah's turn. I could see the nervousness in her eyes, despite her attempts to mask it. She was lying, I could feel it in the air, and yet, she stood there, pretending that everything she had done was justified. I listened to her recount her version of events, but it didn't add up. The inconsistencies were glaring, and every time she spoke, my conviction grew stronger. The turning point came when we presented the financial documents, every bank statement, every transfer, every email that proved Sarah had taken out the loan without my consent. I watched as her face paled when the judge reviewed the evidence. The look in her eyes shifted from confident to desperate, and for the first time in this whole ordeal, I could see the cracks in her facade. She knew she was losing. She knew the truth had caught up with her. But even then, I wasn't prepared for what happened next. Sarah's lawyer made one final attempt to save her, but it was too late. The judge had seen enough. He turned to Sarah and delivered his verdict. It wasn't just about the financial restitution that she had to pay. The judge also ordered her to publicly apologize for her actions, acknowledging the damage she had done to me. I could see the anger in Sarah's eyes as the ruling was read aloud. But it didn't matter anymore. She had lost. As I left the courtroom, a strange feeling washed over me. It wasn't relief, not entirely. It was more like a sense of justice, something I hadn't experienced in a long time. I had spent so long trying to avoid confrontation, trying to keep the peace, but this was different. I had stood up for myself, fought for what was right, and come out on top. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. I didn't speak to Sarah after the trial. I didn't need to. She had been given a chance to make things right, but she refused. The apology that was ordered wasn't enough. It was too little, too late. What was done, and I was done with her. I went home that evening, exhausted but resolute. I had been tested in ways I never imagined, and while the road ahead was still uncertain, I had learned something powerful through this ordeal. I didn't need anyone's approval to live my life. I didn't need to be afraid of standing up for myself, even if it meant facing the people I loved most. And as the days passed, I slowly began to rebuild my life, piece by piece. The scars from this battle would remain, but they didn't define me. I had taken control of my future, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me again. The legal battle was over, but the emotional aftermath would linger. I had learned the hard way that trust could be broken in an instant, that people could betray you without a second thought. But I had also learned that I was stronger than I had ever given myself credit for. I had faced the worst, and I had come out the other side, scarred but unbroken. In the end, the true victory wasn't just in the courtroom. It was in the knowledge that I had stood up for myself. That, in itself, was worth more than anything Sarah could ever take from me.